doing? Good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. People might still trickle in, and that is just fine. We're going to actually do a warm-up and some stretching, but we'll see how that's going to work out, okay? We're going to get nice and close and personal. Okay, so my name is Christine Jones. I'm the creator and founder of mUvmethod. mUvmethod is a conditioning program for dancers. It's based on yoga and Pilates, and it's backed by science. Now, we happen to specialize in weekly stretching, made safe, easy, and effective for dancers ages 5 and up, with our weekly stretch curriculum, which is why I think you're all here. Everybody looking for stretches to do with their dancers? Okay, so it seems to be an area of dance that has not been examined really closely. I think many of us danced growing up. Who danced growing up? Right. So then you go into teaching dance and you teach the stretches you were taught. Does anybody do that? Right. And do you ever wonder, are these the best stretches to be doing for my dancers? Anybody ever wondered that? I wondered that. And I wondered that like 25 years ago. So in a way, mUvmethod really began 25 years ago. I graduated from, I almost said college. I did not graduate from college 25 years ago. I graduated from high school just hit myself in the face with the mic too right there. 25 years ago. You see that headset? This handhold thing is a little bit awkward for me. 25 years ago, I graduated, and I grew up dancing, and I started teaching dance. Now, I had developed quite a few injuries through my dance career, from damaged knees, had quite a bit of damaged cartilage in my knees. That began at age 10, to a very uncomfortable and strained right hamstring. Anybody ever hurt their hamstring in dance? Okay. So much so that I basically sat on ice all the time. So if I wasn't dancing or moving, I was sitting on an ice pack. It was right up at the origin, the place that you don't want to strain. So I've also got very dysfunctional hip flexors. Has anybody ever dealt with hip pain? Okay. Now, looking back, I know exactly why all those things developed, but at the time when I was dancing, I didn't have the tools to move around that or prevent that from happening. I just did what I was taught and told to do. Well, it wasn't working out very well for me, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to dance for a while, and maybe I won't dance again, but I'm going to teach. I really love teaching. So I started teaching dance right out of high school. So I'm 18. I also started college at the University of Utah. Now, at the time, you could get around math requirements. I don't like math. It's so numbers, it goes blurry for me. So I decided I would go with a BA. And because I was taking a break from dance, I didn't go with dance, I went with English. I love writing and I love reading. It seemed like a good fit. Well, about 2 years later, I realized, you know what? English and dance are not really aligning here. I'm not learning some of the things that I'm seeking to learn through this degree, so maybe I need to look elsewhere. You see, I had this question, I had this thought in my mind that there's got to be a better way to condition dancers. I developed all these injuries growing up. The students I'm working with, unless they come to me naturally made to dance, they're struggling too. And I don't know what to tell them to do. I don't know how to help them move beyond their limitations. So I want to learn more. So I went exercise physiology, and I quite enjoyed it. Now, during that time, I also had a dance teacher call me. She said, you know what, Christine, we're starting this professional company. I think you should come audition. I said, okay, I'm feeling a bit better. I've taken a break. My hamstrings are feeling better. My knees are feeling better. My right hamstring is still very, very, very dysfunctional, though. It pulls if I look at it wrong. So it's just super sensitive. I said, you know what, I'll try. Give it a shot. I miss it. We all miss dancing, right? Did you guys stop dancing after? Anybody stop dancing after high school and then really, really, really miss it? Right, so then you start teaching dance, so you can not miss it as much. But anyway, so I try out for the company, I make the company, I start dancing with them, and quickly, a lot of the pain starts to come back. Well, one of the things they were doing to condition the dancers was Pilates, but it was a particular approach. It was based on the traditional teachings of Joseph Pilates, okay? So it's a classical approach versus contemporary. There are two different styles. Now, back then, this is like 20 years ago, there was much more of a distinction between the two. There's been more of a merge and more of a middle point when people are meeting in the middle, but back then there was not. You did classical or you did contemporary. Classical encouraged, has anybody done Pilates? Yeah, okay, so classical Pilates encourages you to move to what's called an imprinted position. So it was very exaggerated. So you posteriorly tilt your pelvis, which tightens your hamstrings, and you would flatten out your back. So the idea was actually to get rid of the natural curves of your spine. Well, we know now that that's not a good idea. You want the natural curves of your spine present. Why? They provide shock absorption, better muscle recruitment. They're there for a reason. However, Joseph Pilates, back when he developed Pilates, it was a long time ago, he didn't have the resources we have now. He thought that infants, like a baby, was the epitome of health. And if you look at a baby's spine, it is flat. Why? They spend a lot of time lying down, okay? So the curvature of your spine develops naturally over time through infant development. So as we move, the curves become present. But I'm doing a classical approach. We're trying to get rid of the curves. So we're moving to this really exaggerated inverted position. It's overworking my hip flexors, starts to bother them again. It's tightening my hamstrings, starts to bother that again. And the knees, they're okay, but they're just not that great anymore, period. I figured at age 22, I had bad knees. I thought I was old, right? I'm like, oh, it's just age. So it happens as we age, but I'm 22. So I am not old, nor should I be dealing with this type of pain or these injuries. So I decide, you know what, dancing just might not be the route for me. So I'll go back to school. Oh, I took a break from school. So I'll go back to school, I'll continue teaching dance, because that's what I love to do. I graduated, I'm still teaching dance, and a few years later I start to feel a little bit stagnant. So I'm thinking, I'm gonna go back and get my master's. Maybe I'll go into physical therapy, because remember, I really, really, really want the answer to dance conditioning, because I've been wondering, there's gotta be a better way. So I continually say this to myself, there's just gotta be a better way. Well, the same time a friend says, hey, you know what, you should come try this Pilates class. I'm like, I don't really like Pilates. I had a really bad experience last time. She said, you know, I think you're gonna like it. It's based on a more contemporary approach. It's super scientifical, that is not a word. It's super anatomical, science-based, you're gonna love it. So I go to the class, pretty wary, because I really did not have a good experience the time before. Well, it's a form of Pilates called Stop Pilates. Has anybody done Stop Pilates? Okay, I loved it. I loved it really, really quickly. I thought, this is great. We're talking about anatomy, we're talking about placement of the spine, we're encouraging a neutral spine. I like this. I liked it so much that I decided I would become certified in Stop Pilates. At the time, there were no licensed training centers in the state of Utah, that's where I'm from. So I had to travel to California to do all my training, actually to Long Beach. So I was going back and forth from Salt Lake City to John Gary Pilates, which is in Long Beach. You guys know John Gary? Yeah, it was a great training. I loved it. So I started with Reformer and then thought, I'm gonna get fully certified. I really, really like this, and I think this is gonna help the dancers I work with. So I go through their full certification. I start teaching Pilates in the day, still working with dancers at night. I'm incorporating what I'm learning from Pilates, and we'll talk about the results of that in a moment, but I still want a little bit more. So I applied for their instructor trainer program, which I got in, went to Canada for some time, went through this program so that you can come out and teach Stop Pilates. So I started traveling around teaching people how to teach Pilates. So I was instructor trainer, certifying people in Pilates. Well, I thought, you know what, there aren't any licensed training centers in the state of Utah. I might as well open a licensed training center. So I opened the only licensed training center in the state of Utah, and it's still running. Owned it for like 2 years, and then decided it was time to start a family. So I sold it. So I sold it to a friend and thought, you know what, I'll go back to it later. My babies are only gonna be babies for a short time here, so I really wanna enjoy this. Sold the studio. Okay, so this is kind of the background of how I started to get to where we are today and how mUvmethod evolved. I was also teaching dance the whole time. I stepped back, I started to teach less and less and less the more I got involved in the Pilates world, but I was adding what I liked about Pilates into the conditioning program for my warm-up at the time. So I wasn't teaching just a conditioning class, I was still teaching full dance classes, jazz technique, all these things, so my warm-up was starting to incorporate some of the things I've learned in Pilates. And I liked it. It had some good results. So core strength was improving, awareness was improving, so just the dancers learning what placement alignment is, what neutral pelvis, what a neutral spine is super important. They're learning this, they're grasping this, and this is a good thing. However, I was not pleased with mobility and flexibility. In fact, I felt that some of the dancers were starting to get tight in their hip flexors and their hamstrings. So I wasn't seeing the benefits in the flexibility area. I was definitely seeing benefits in strength, stability, and control, and balance, and alignment when the dancers were thinking about it. Now, one of the problems was they could learn a neutral pelvis, a neutral spine, and how to stabilize it lying down or even sitting up or standing. But once they started moving, if they had muscular imbalances, they lost that placement alignment. They went right back to whatever their norm was. So we all kind of have a postural norm, and most of us have some deviations from where we ideally should be based on muscles that have tightened and based on muscles that have elongated. So I was addressing the muscles that had elongated and creating strength there, but I wasn't really addressing the muscles that had tightened as effectively as I could. So 3 years later, 2 kids later, I'm a stay-at-home mom for the most part, teaching a little bit of dance on the side, mostly because it's just a fun outlet. Nice to get away and have somebody just say, okay, rather than, no, Mom, you know. So I'm teaching dance and still really kind of examining it. I'm still saying to myself, but there's still got to be a better way. There's still got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to help all dancers, not just the ones that come to you naturally flexible, not just the ones that were born to dance. You guys all probably have those students, do you not? Do you have students that seem to have just natural range in every position? They don't have to work that hard. Anybody have that? And then we have the majority of dancers, and they don't have natural range in every single position, and they have to work a little bit harder. And the sad thing often with that is they are often your most passionate dancers. They are the ones that are like, give me the tools. I want to find success, okay? And so, makes me a little emotional. I just got a little bit teary-eyed. I will probably cry. I cry. I love what I do, and I get emotional and very passionate about it. So they're coming to you and they're saying, but Christine, or teacher, whoever you are, I want to find success too, but I feel limited. How do I work through those limitations? Well, like I said, 2 kids later, stay-at-home mom for the most part, a friend says to me, hey Christine, come to a yoga class. I'm like, you know, I've done a little bit of yoga here and there, but it always aggravated my hamstring. I would go to Bikram yoga classes, and due to the heat, I just wouldn't feel me straining the leg, and because I hadn't rehabilitated it, it was prone to injury. Now, when I owned my Pilates studio and through all that training, I was actually able to create the strength my hamstring needed to stop being pulled. So I was in a good place to do yoga. So I go to yoga, and I liked it a lot. I liked it so much that I did 500 hours of yoga teacher training. And then 3 years later, I am now taking what I've learned in yoga and applying it to what I'm doing at dance. And through yoga, I was introduced to all of these new stretches. And I remember so many times in yoga thinking, this would have been nice to have. This stretch would have been good to have. Wow, why didn't anybody bring this to dance? Why have the yogis been doing it all this time and we haven't? So I started just incorporating. Now I do not incorporate all stretches that I learned from yoga into dance. I use the ones that are dance specific and designed to improve particular things, and I took this stuff out that I actually thought might leave a dancer a little bit prone to injury, okay? Dancers tend to have a little more sensitive knees, so one of the things we have done at mUvmethod is just removed any stretch that I feel may put too much strain on their already somewhat vulnerable knees, okay? So I'm taking what I like and I'm adding it in. And we'll pause there and talk about the results. So this was about 7 years ago, okay? So it started 25 years ago with me saying, there's gotta be a better way. There's really gotta be a better way to help all these kids get to where they wanna be. How do we help everyone move beyond their limitations, everyone reach their full potential, and everyone share their passion for dance, not just the naturally gifted kids that come to you with a lot of flexibility and mobility. That led me to exercise physiology, which led me to stop Pilates, which led me to yoga, which led me to incorporating all these things into a weekly class. So much so that I got to the point that I said, you know, I don't really want to do the competition thing anymore. It's just not where my passion is. I want to just condition the dancers. So the studio I was at said, okay, we want you to work with our most competitive kids. They break their teams into 3 levels. So they have their elite team, their light teams, and their rec teams. And it's just based on the number of hours the dancers want to commit to. So they try out for the team that's appropriate for them, that meets them where they are. And I was working with the elite teams. Only the teens and the seniors. So pretty much like 14 and up, okay? So let's say I started this in June of 2013. And within about 5 months, the dancers are like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. And everybody's talking about their increased flexibility and mobility, particularly in their hips. At the time, I was focusing more on hip flexibility. I hadn't really gone into like mid, back, shoulders, spine, so we weren't doing a lot of back bending yet. I really felt like we've got to create this flexibility a little more foundationally and address all the muscles that oppose movement in the hips first, because that's where dancers tend to have a lot of dysfunction. And because of the dysfunction there, it leads to dysfunction all in all other areas of the body, like the knees. So we focused on the hip flexibility for the most part. Well, they're seeing results, the teachers are seeing results, the teachers are coming back going, oh my gosh, thank you, like whatever you're doing, just keep doing it, because they're able to meet the technical side of dance with more ease. And that's what they just kept saying, it just seems easier to them now, like they're just hitting it. I don't have to work as hard to get them to where they need to be, so just keep doing what you're doing. So, great, I keep doing what I'm doing. About 4 months later, the dancers start going to convention and competitions. Well, at those conventions and competitions, outside studios, so studios in our area started to come up to the owner and say, what are your dancers doing differently? Like something is going on. They look like things are looking easy to them. Did you add more ballet? Are you doing more of this or more of that? And my cousin, who's the owner of the studio I was doing this at, was at first kind of confused, and she says, oh, well yeah, it's like some yoga class thing Christine's doing. I don't really know, I just kind of let her do her thing. And so, that's where mUvmethod really began. Up to this point, I just wanted a solution to my problem when I graduated from high school. I wanted to find a better way. Which led me to teaching these conditioning classes, which I was pretty happy with the results. I'm like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. But then so people started to reach out. They started saying, hey, how do we get your program in our studio? And initially I was like, yeah, I don't have a program. I just teach this conditioning class at the studio. Like, what are you talking about? Oh no, we want what you're teaching there. We want it here. And so I decided to give it a name, which is mUvmethod. And there's not a lot of people are like, what was the story behind your name? I'm like, oh, nothing. It's just a method of movement. And I actually wanted to spell it M-O-V-E, method, but it was taken by a moving company. So there's nothing really that exciting and creative about it. It wasn't creative at all. But I gave it a name. I just had to call it something, right? We have to name things to create familiarity. So we name it, and then I trained some teachers. And then we got to work. And then that next year we went into about 5 studios in our area. And the program just continued to grow. A year later, I was invited to present here at Dance Teacher Summit, and now 4 years later I'm back. I've been doing it for the last 4 years, and the program has continued to evolve. Well, once I stepped outside of the state and started presenting at things like Dance Teacher Summit, people outside the state start saying, well, we want your program. Well, at the time, it's a huge program to scale. We're conditioning, we're stretching, we're doing recovery. But what people keep asking for is the stretches. So I thought, okay, we will start by scaling the stretch program first. This will be kind of like our pilot program out there, see how it does, and then once people go through the stretch component and learn everything they need to know about stretching, we'll add in the conditioning and we'll add in the recovery. So that led me to the creation of what we call our mUvStretch Level 2 training. This is a pretty in-depth training. It covers anatomy. I mean, we go in-depth at anatomy, so it's an online course that is taught. Actually, we own a cadaver lab in Utah, and my brother teaches anatomy courses to all sorts of people. So he actually teaches that portion. So if you're interested in viewing a cadaver lab, you can in our mUvStretch Level 2 training. So we dive into the science of stretching. We take a little bit of a different approach where when I took my anatomy courses, the focus was definitely on muscular contraction. So these are the hip flexors. When they contract, they create hip flexion. And we just do the opposite. These are the hip flexors. They create hip flexion, but they oppose hip extension. So that's basically how we teach teachers. What does the muscle oppose? You need to know what it opposes so you know what to stretch, right? So it started there. We released that, people really like it, but it's a big training and it's a big commitment, and not every studio has time to add in an hour-long stretch class, because that's what it trains you to do. It trains you to teach an hour-long, we call it a mUvStretch class. It's great if you can do it, but people start saying, but how do I just get your stretches? Like, I just want to add them in my warm-up or something, and I thought, oh, okay, we can do that too. So now we've released what's called our mUvStretch Level 1 training and membership. It does include some training in the fundamentals of safe and effective stretching, because you guys are going to learn today that there's more than stretches to stretching. Okay, we've got to know some things about the body. We've got to know some things about the nervous system, the fascial system, the skeletal system, the muscular system, because they all work together and they all regulate stretching, okay? So we released this. Now our mUvStretch Level 1 training is what we're going to talk about today. It's our membership. And it provides access for teachers that are like, I just want to add in these stretches to what I'm already doing. I like my weekly warm-up, but I want to update my stretch curriculum. I realize that my dancers don't all have the flexibility and mobility and the joint range that they need to meet the new demands of dance, because dance has evolved, has it not? Dance has evolved so much in the last 10 years, which is really great. But stretching has not seemed to evolve with it. So, which is why I assume you're all here. Y'all want to talk about stretching, right? Okay, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so that you know how we got to where we got. I did not wake up one day going, I'm going to specialize in stretching. That was like the last thought in my mind. I wanted to specialize in dance conditioning, and I actually didn't look at stretching as part of dance conditioning, but I do now. I looked at stretching as a way to improve flexibility and joint mobility. I looked at dance conditioning more in terms of strengthen from the inside out. So moving from your deep core postural muscles to your muscles that mobilize and stabilize, to your muscles that mobilize only. So I looked at them separately. Does anybody see them that way? And I think for a long time, that's how it's been viewed. Maybe forever. I mean, most people still do. But I don't see it that way anymore. This is what I know to be true. At least I believe it's true, based on my 25-year-long case study and the results that have come back from our program. And it's this. Dancers are limited by flexibility and joint mobility more than anything else. And this is why. If you don't have the flexibility and joint mobility, you cannot access the right muscles. If you can't access them, you can't activate them, right? If you don't have access, you can't work it correctly. And when we cannot access and therefore activate the proper muscles to meet the demands of dance, we cheat. And cheating creates gaps. Gaps in your technique leads to pain, to burnout, to frustration, to pain, injury. So many things that nobody really wants. And it's so easy to reverse it. You just provide the dancer with the stretches they need to create the joint mobility, to create the flexibility, to grant the access to activate the right muscles. Super simple, right? Okay? It actually is. We deliver it in a way that it's so simple, I believe you just stretch it all. Because it's going to be really hard to say, okay, you've got good turnout, so you don't need to stretch this muscle. You don't, so you need to stretch this muscle. Your hamstrings, so you don't do it that way. No, you provide stretch sequences that are balanced, that target all muscular groups, not just the hamstrings, inner hip, and thighs. Who stretches the hamstrings and inner hip and thighs? Do all your warm-ups do that? Yeah. My warm-up back in the day, we went to the hamstrings within like 1 minute. It was something like this, I don't know. We did something to warm the body up, and I'm pretty sure we went here, 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 bam, okay? And I wondered why my hamstring was so dysfunctional. It wasn't ready to release. And because the force I was generating, the muscle couldn't pull back and resist it, I just kept aggravating it and aggravating it and aggravating it. So we do it a little bit better now, okay? We release tension in the back before ever going to the hamstring, make sure the body's super duper warm so we don't create strain. Never force, okay? So, this 25-year-long case study led me to this conclusion, and I'm gonna give you guys an example just to really, so it can hit home a little bit, so you can take it in. Okay, how y'all feeling? Have I lost anybody completely? Okay, and you know what, I apologize, I had to take you through that whole long thing, because it's actually my least favorite thing to do, but I just want you to know how I got to where I got, and it was a lot of trial and error. Okay, it was a lot of experimenting. It was a lot of faith of the studio owner that let me do whatever. She was like, I don't know what she's doing there. But we just let her do her thing, and it finally came out in a way that we really like it, okay? So, first position. Everybody knows first position, right? Everybody's probably tried to teach first position, and every dancer is going to, at some point, learn first position, like day one of dance. That topic is going to come up, okay? Now, who's ever looked at first position and thought, oh, I gotta really stretch for that? Nobody, right? Nobody. You look at scorpion or needle and you go, yeah. Actually, I look at those positions and say, yeah, not today. Not ever in this body, in this life, okay? But, you see what I'm saying? First position and scorpion and needle appear to be very different and appear to require a much greater range of motion to do one or the other. Right? And you would probably think you wanted to stretch before you're attempting that. You're not going to go into that cold, okay? First position, on the other hand, is not generally viewed to be a position that requires a ton of flexibility and joint mobility. And it doesn't for some, because they came with it naturally. But for the ones that didn't, it actually does require quite a bit of flexibility and joint range of motion. Now that doesn't mean you need to do a 20-minute stretch sequence before you go to first position, because you're not going to. If you teach ballet, you're going to have your dancers come to the ballet bar and they're going to go to first position. It means that throughout the week, you're providing dancers with the right stretches to create access to the muscles they need to engage in first position. So, we all know first position. What does it involve? It involves external hip rotation, extended knees, neutral joint position. Ankles should be neutral, knees neutral, pelvis is neutral, spine is neutral, shoulders vary, scapula varies, depending on placement of the arms, okay? Now, what opposes first position? So that's how we look at everything with move stretch. Here's the movement we want to do. What opposes the movement? Those are all the muscle groups that need to be stretched so that the dancer can achieve the desired movement, okay? So what opposes it? Well, your skeletal system, your fascial system, and your muscular system all can oppose it, or all can create it, okay? I'm going to talk about two different groups of dancers. We're going to have Group A, and we're going to have Group B. Now, Group A are the dancers that come to you that love first position, because first position is so easy for them to get into. They've got this beautiful range, their hips turn out, they're comfortable in that position. Well, we've got to start at what's happening in their skeletal system and go out from there. So these dancers often come to you with a side-facing shallow acetabulum. That's your hip socket. So it's just that little, basically, hole in the side of the pelvis where the femur comes and attaches. The surrounding ligaments tend to be a little bit looser in this structural, or this in Group A, okay? And due to the way that they are just put together, they do not activate or engage muscles called your abductors quite as much, because they tend to stand like this. So the abductors don't really ever get strong or tight. If you don't engage a muscle, it doesn't become strong and tight. It stays pretty lax. And it's always in a state of stretch, so it's always slightly stretched, okay? So we don't create tightness in the outer hip. The structure of the person alone is completely conducive to external hip rotation. That's actually comfortable and natural for them. And the ligaments are a little bit looser. So they're able to achieve first position, find their placement very easily. They don't have to deviate or engage muscles that aren't going to help them, and they can rely on their deep six external hip rotators, boom, right then, okay? Your deep six external hip rotators are the muscles that you're trying to strengthen for turnout. Then they're ready to start strengthening their turnout, okay? So that's Group A. And I'm willing to bet that's the minority of your dancers. So I don't think that most of them fall into that category. You get some, but probably not most of them. Now, just because they have good turnout doesn't mean they don't need to stretch other muscles though. So that's important to note, because they still need good stretching. They are just really good at turnout naturally, which happens to prevent a lot of gaps from forming in their technique down the road, because we turn out a lot, okay? Yes, dance has changed, and we do more parallel positions now, so they actually can become a little more limited in those positions, but they can stretch muscles to create it, and it's less detrimental for them in terms of pain and injury long term, okay? Now we have Group B. I am Group B, my daughter's one. A lot of the dancers I work with would fall into this category, okay? So this population, or this group of dancers, has a more forward-facing, deep acetabulum, okay? Meaning just the hip socket's a little bit facing this direction or slightly this direction, and the socket is deep. The ligaments tend to be a little bit tighter, and due to their structural makeup alone, they stand more parallel, okay? Now, once they start dancing, they probably start to stand like this, due to the fact that you turn out more, and due to the fact that dancers often want you to know they're a dancer, so what do? They walk like this, right? So they've identified with being a dancer, so they gotta show you they're a dancer by the way they walk. So, it's not always a natural thing, sometimes that's a forced thing, but this person is not. First position doesn't come as easily to this person. Now, 45-degree range is fine. They're fine here. But how many dancers are happy with that? Not very many, right? They want more. They want more. They want more turnout, okay? So what do? Well, they start to force their turnout. They cheat, for lack of a better word. How do they cheat? Okay, they extend their hips slightly and they engage their glute maximus. And it's subtle, but when you extend your hips, you can turn on your glutes, and your glutes are great, powerful hip extensors, and they can assist with hip extension when the hip is extended. But they assist, and they're powerful. They are not a stabilizing muscle. So when you're training turnout, and you're training first position, you need to be training the muscles that were designed to do it. And these muscles are involved in stability. So your muscles are different. You have muscles that stabilize and mobilize, and muscles that mobilize only. Training turnout, you need to make sure you're conditioning and training deep core muscles that stabilize, but also the muscles that stabilize and mobilize, and your deep six happen to fall into that category because you're often in first position, right? You want it to be a sustainable position. Glute maximus is not a muscle that you use for sustainability, it's a muscle you use for power. So it's your muscle you use in your arabesque, or your attitude derriere, or your penché, or your grand jeté. Okay, but who has dancers that seem or appear to have good turnout when both feet are on the ground, but the second they go on the releve, or the second they lift one leg, they lose their turnout? Have you ever seen that? See it all the time. Okay, so they are likely the dancers that fall into group B, forward-facing, deep acetabulum, tighter outer hips, tighter ligaments, moving to hip extension, engaging the glutes to create the turnout, that need those stretches. They need them really, really bad because they cannot sustain the turnout. Y'all with me? All good? Okay. Okay, so that's first problem. When we do not create the mobility to help the dancer achieve the movement they're being asked to do. Sustainability, that's going to be your first problem. Your second problem is going to be dysfunction, okay? When you engage your glute maximus as a turnout muscle for sustained periods of time, because it was not designed to do that work, you have this set of muscles called your hip flexors. We all know about hip flexors, right? Who's had hip flexor pain? Anybody? Okay. I have tons of it, and a lot of dancers I work with, actually every dancer we work with at some point complains about their hip flexors. Why? Because your hip flexors in dance are used probably more than any muscle you have. And they're not used like the average population uses them. Most people use them to walk, maybe run, maybe lift their leg to 45 degrees. But dancers are lifting their leg to 90 and higher, over and over and over again. So it's best to have your hip flexors only do hip flexion. They should not be helping with any other movement. They should only be doing hip flexion. But here's the problem. They can't. They can assist in external hip rotation, and they can also segmentally stabilize the spine. So you have a group of muscles, like your glute maximus, mobilizer, hip flexors, mobilizer, and stabilizer. Deep six external hip rotators, can't access them, they're not going to work. So we have the dancers cheating, using the glute maximus, pressing the hips forward. Now the hip flexors are like, you know what, you can't sustain that, but I can, and I'm so good at doing everything, I'm going to go out ahead and help. So it starts to help. It helps maintain the external rotation because we're not using the right muscles to do it in the first place. Now what do? We overwork it, and it just becomes angry, basically. It's like, I can't do it all, but I'm going to try. Anybody ever feel that way? At work or whatever, when you're not getting any help, and you're like, I really can't do it all. That's what's happening to your hip flexor. And what a muscle does when it can't do it all is it starts to get inflamed. It tries to send you signals that it needs help, generally through pain, and when you don't respond, then you get injured, okay? So, now we got a hip flexor problem. So our hip flexors become even more dysfunctional than they already were. Then, not only that, to top it all off, when you engage your glute maximus, you also engage your glute medius, minimus, and TFL. These are your abductors. They're the muscles that oppose external hip rotation in the first place, so now you just made the muscles tighter. Wouldn't it be nice to reverse that? Right? A really big problem based on a simple little solution. Just give them the right stretches. Give them the right stretches to create the access to the right muscles so they stop using their glute maximus and stop creating all these problems, because this small problem that starts here just compounds, okay? And dancers start to get burnt out. They feel fatigued. They're experiencing pain, frustration, injury. They're bummed out. They just cannot meet the technical side of dance with ease and efficiency. But they can with the right stretches, all right? Do you guys want to talk about those stretches? Yeah. Okay, good. because I feel like an auctioneer right now. I'm like, anybody, blah, blah, blah. I've been going really, really fast. Okay, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out how we're going to do this. First off, any questions? That was a lot of information. Did I overwhelm anybody? It happens from time to time, okay? So, this is all that you need to know. That dancers are limited by flexibility and joint mobility more than strength. But we've often thought that strength is a limiting factor. So we try to condition them more. We try to create more strength. We end up, because you guys, have you ever felt your dancers' backs? Do they feel weak? Do your dancers feel weak? If you really palpate their muscles, no, they are rigid and they are strong. Most of your dancers are probably really, really strong. Most. Who has hypermobile students though? Okay? And that's a thing. So hypermobility really is a thing, but there's actually a condition. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. That is what hypermobility is. It's a connective tissue disorder. Do you have it? Okay. So you know it's a real thing. In fact, some people with Ehlers-Danlos are in wheelchairs because the connective tissue is not working. These are not the dancers I'm talking about so much. They need stability. Absolutely. And they probably need it with a dance physiotherapist. Okay, they need somebody that really, really knows the body. Most of your dancers do not have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I'm pretty sure. Most of them have probably forced hypermobility by stretching their ligaments. That's a different subject, okay? They will still benefit from these stretches because I actually pull the hypermobile kids out a little bit and have them work on contracting just a bit when they're stretching, so just to create a little more strength and stability in the joints, okay? So, I did want to say, just mention, most dancers, not all, are limited by flexibility and joint mobility, not strength. They're actually really strong. These are strong people. You can see that they are strong, okay? And if you don't, just feel their backs, or ask them how their backs are like ropes. They're too strong in their backs, actually. We'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, so we create the range. We prevent the cheating, which prevents the gaps, which prevents the frustration, burnout, fatigue, injury, pain. I mean, it can't prevent it all. Things happen and life happens, but it's where you need to start. So, let's get started. I'm going to have you guys do a few stretches. I don't know how we're going to do this. Okay, scoot way up. So let's scoot up. Anybody have any questions, or do you want to just get moving and ask me after? Let's do that. Let's move a little bit. Now, you don't have to stretch, but stick around because I'm going to talk about the stretches we're going to do, and I'm going to give you age recommendations on them, okay? Okay, so, did you say D? Okay. That wasn't an option, okay? Okay, so prior to stretching, you should always warm up. But we're not going to have time to do a really long warm-up because I want to actually get you in a few of these stretches so you can feel them. So, I'm going to warm you up a little bit because I just literally can't let you do it without being slightly warm. Okay, and you know what? Just to make it really work, we're going to start in plank. What a good way to warm up. Okay, high plank. So, we're just come to a high, okay, oh, side note, you guys, stop. I got to tell you really quick. Do y'all know what regulates your flexibility? Your nervous system, okay? I will be here all weekend up at my booth, but we're vendors here as well. But in this stretch guide, read about the nervous system. So breath work is a huge component of what we do. We actually teach dancers how to breathe. And it's nice because it translates over to everything they do. Dancers are notorious for holding their breath and breathing up here super shallowly, okay? This triggers your fight or flight response, which is part of your sympathetic nervous system, which makes your muscles contract. You definitely don't want to have your fight or flight response way up here when you're trying to stretch. You want to create equilibrium between your fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and your rest and digest, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. And when you create this equilibrium, that's optimal for stretching. You don't want to be so relaxed that you can't be active, but you don't want to be stressed to the point your muscles are contracting. So, side note, we always begin each class with breath work, whether I choose focused attention meditation or just 3D breath pattern is lying down, placing your hands in certain areas, and just learning to expand laterally and posteriorly. it does really good things in terms of breathing, and it also works to stretch out muscles that are tightened. So just by our breath alone, we can actually create more mobility in our spine. So your nervous system regulates flexibility based on perceived stress. Your breath, the way you're breathing, sends a very powerful signal to the nervous system. If you're holding your breath, if you're breathing shallowly, the nervous system is like, oh, we're in danger, trigger fight or flight, gotta be prepared for whatever's coming. But when we breathe deep and full, it triggers our parasympathetic nervous system. We call it rest and digest, and then we calm down a little bit. So again, you want to have equilibrium, and the easiest way to create it is just with some breath work. It takes a minute. So I really recommend, before you start your warm-ups, or even when your kids first come into class, take a moment. Teach them how to breathe deep. 3-second inhale, 3-second exhale. It actually also kind of creates this calm in their class and creates just a little more focused space. It really kind of changes the energy too. Okay, but you know what? We're gonna go into plank. So we're gonna do the opposite of deep breathing right now, but I'm still gonna ask you to breathe while you're in it. So high plank, just to try to warm up your bodies just a little bit, okay? And you know what? Just get really comfortable with the people next to you, and if you kick them, they already know you're sorry, okay? So just hold here and breathe for a moment. Let me check out my music and see if it's even gonna work. So, in this position, take an inhale through your mouth, take an exhale. You can exhale through your mouth, or you can exhale through your nose, either way. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, or your nose. Now you're gonna lift your hips and come into what's called downward facing dog. So it's an upside down beat. Now, I talked earlier about not going to the hamstrings, so don't bend your knees. Bend your knees. Yeah, there you go. And then just start to pedal out your feet. So you're gonna bend one knee, and then you're gonna bend the other knee. And you know what? If your hips wanna start moving, let your hips move, and if your shoulders even move a little bit, and your head sways side to side, just allow for a little bit of movement here. So we're not too worried about placement and alignment yet. We're just thinking release. So breathe nice and deep and full. Now inhale, look forward at your hands, and exhale, step your feet forward. Bend your knees, so generous bend in your knees. Catch a hold of opposite elbows. Allow your head to hang really heavy here. And you can place your hands in front of you or behind your legs, but if you've got it in front of you, start to sway side to side, just a little bit. So we always release tension in the spine before ever stretching the the hamstrings. It's all connected. So the muscles, the fascia coming from your back connects down to your sit bones. The hamstrings originate from the sit bones and they travel down to the back of the knees. So everything's connected, and it's really important that you let go of tension in the back body before moving to the hamstrings. It's just more effective, and it feels better. Now, we're going to just release your hands down and slowly roll it to standing. So roll up one vertebra at a time. Allow your head, neck to just hang heavy. Good. When you get to the top, I was going to tell you to reach your arms out, around, and up, but you maybe just take them forward and up. Okay, so in this position, let's see if we can find a neutral pelvis and spine. So I want you to relax your butts, because we don't use the glutes to extend the hips, right? Well, you do if your leg's behind you, only in your arabesque. Okay, engage your abdominals and see if you can lift your hip bones up towards your ribs and draw your waistline in towards your spine. Now from here, you're gonna come into what's called chair pose. So bring your palms to the center of your chest and just sit your hips back. So really sit back like you're sitting into a chair. Notice what happened in your feet. So did they roll in? So that's okay, just push the pinky edge side of your foot. And try to keep your feet parallel. So one thing we do at mUvmethod is we move to a parallel position for a lot of things we do to try to create a little more balance in the hips. So when it comes to strength and conditioning, we do almost everything parallel to create a little more balance. Now from here, just fold forward over your legs. So Avery's just gonna hang over her legs and keep them bent. Everybody, so let's just keep bending. Yep. Now roll back up to standing, one vertebra at a time. When you get to the top, reach out, around, and up. We're just gonna repeat that a few times. So bend your knees, sit back, press to the pinky edge sides of your feet, and then just fold. Hang heavy on your thighs. Good, let your neck go. Inhale, roll up one vertebra at a time. When you get to the top, reach your arms forward and up. Exhale, really sit back. Press to the pinky edge sides of your feet. Keep your belly nice and engaged. Release over your thighs. It should feel good. Try one more time. Roll up slowly, one vertebra at a time. Engage your belly, reach your arms up, and then sit back. Take your weight into your heels, lift your toes, spread them wide. Fold forward over your legs. Now from here, just plant your palms, step back, come back to high plank. We're doing a very modified warm-up, everybody. So hold here and breathe for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, downward facing dog. Lift your hips, soft knees. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, step forward, ragdoll. Sway side to side, knees are bent. No need to stretch the hamstrings yet. You get to those later. Let the head hang heavy. Relax your shoulders. Now release your fingertips to the ground. Slowly roll up one vertebra at a time. When you get to the top, reach your arms forward and up. Exhale, sit back into your heels. Keep your belly nice and tight. Release over your thighs. And slowly roll up one vertebra at a time. Reach your arms forward and up. Exhale, sit back. Weight in your heels, toes lifted. Fold forward, relax your head, neck, and shoulders. Last one. Inhale, slowly roll up. Reach your arms out, around, and up, or forward and up. Sit back into your heels. Allow your torso to just hang heavy over your thighs. Release. Inhale, slowly roll up one vertebra at a time. Reach your arms up. Exhale, sit back and down. This time, fold forward, plant your palms, step back, high plank, and lift your hips to downward facing dog. Now, I don't know if I was gonna have you lift your right leg. That might be a problem. Let's not, if you can, lift it without smacking the person right behind you, but rather than turning it out, keep it parallel. Yeah, so it's called a closed hip position. Keep breathing nice and deep and full. Now you're gonna exhale, step your right foot forward to the outside of your right hand if that's available in the space that you're in. So it's just called a runner's lunge, and all I want you to do here is just kind of rock back and forth. So you're just gonna add a little bit of natural and intuitive movement. Swing. You can even move to the side a little bit. You can rotate right, you can rotate left. Just kind of working through some tension in the hip flexors, because none of your hip flexors probably feel tight today, right? Now plant your palms and just step back to high plank and lift your hips, come to downward facing dog. Inhale, lift your left leg nice and carefully. Closed hip position. Exhale, runner's lunge on your left side. So step your left foot to the outside of your left hand. And again, just a little bit of sway, forward and back. A little side to side. Now I'm going to take you guys through, you just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to take you through the majority of the stretch sequence, but I'm going to leave a few out due to space. You're just not going to have the space to do it. And we can go back and talk about it for a moment and what ages I recommend and which stretches. But I want you to just kind of film in your own body, okay? Step back to high plank and lift your hips to downward facing dog. Inhale, lift your right leg. Now, just a side note, we're going to stretches sooner than I usually do. I like to take a little more time. So don't worry about depth here, just really focus on placement and alignment, okay? So step your right foot forward between your hands, come to low lunge. So low lunge is a transition step. It's something we teach our dancers from the age they are 5 and up. Low lunge is super fundamental. So in your low lunge, you want to ensure that your right knee is directly over your left, not because of structure. Really, it's not going to damage your right knee if it goes forward of your foot. It's more to set up a wide stance to create a good base for what is to come. Now from here, we're going to go into what's called crescent moon sweeps. I'm going to take you to crescent moon first, then we're going to take you to crescent moon side bend, and then the sweeps. But in your manual, your little stretch guide, by the way, did anybody notice it's a stretch guide? That's a typo. Realized after I make 5,000 copies. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Stretch guide. Better than a guide. It's a double guide. Okay, so lower your back knee down, and you're going to reach your arms out, around, and up. Okay? So this is called crescent moon. Go for as much depth as available right now, but don't push it. Hip flexors they're sensitive. A lot of them are dysfunctional, which makes them sensitive, right? So in this position, I want you to engage your front body. So dancers are notorious for arching their back in this position. Why? Because their hip flexors are tight and their backs are bending. So we're not going to allow you to extend your spine. We're going to focus on the hip flexors. So you want to think of lifting your hip bones up towards your ribs and maintain a neutral spine. That may bring you out of the stretch, so you might not get as much depth. But the goal here is hip flexors, not spine. Okay? The goal is to give their poor, overworked backs a break. Dancers have a lot of back pain. One of the reasons is this. Okay, so we're focusing on hip flexors only. This is where your littles start. So your littles, you want to teach them this movement, and with your minis, you don't go beyond this. Anybody's back knee hurting? Yeah, that's why we usually use mats in our class, okay? Or I let the kids roll up a sweatshirt or something. One thing you can do to get around the pain on the back knee is just tuck your toes. So you can take a little bit of weight into your foot, take some pressure off your knee. Okay, then step one is crescent moon. So you gotta teach your dancers crescent moon. Then you're gonna go to crescent moon side bend. So Avery, just take it over to the side. Still in the position. Oh, does that feel good? Yes and no, right? So in crescent moon side bend, we're stretching a whole lot. We're stretching the side body, the hip flexors, the anterior thigh, okay? When we were straight up, we weren't really getting into the side body. Now, crescent moon sweeps is a step up. Don't do it with your littles, because it's just gonna turn in, you'll know why in a minute. Just imagine your 5-year-olds doing this. Placement alignment will go all out the window. So in crescent moon, the goal here is a squared pelvis. So what happens is if we're a little bit tight in the hip flexors, the pelvis is gonna slightly rotate towards the back leg. So you really wanna work parallel. We're gonna work parallel a ton, because the biggest problem dancers are having is they're bypassing the tight muscles by slightly changing the position of the joint. So you have to dial in on placement alignment. Hips stay forward. If that means you put stickers on your dancers' hips, that's what you do, so that they can gauge where their body's in space, okay? So now we've got this nice crescent and side bend position, and then we move into what are called sweeps. So Avery, just go side to side. So she's gonna walk over, and this feels really good, and it's especially beneficial for your older dancers, because older dancers, their fascia system tends to get a little bit tighter, okay? And this stretch is a little, yeah, it's gonna be kind of hard to do it with your, or time it, get in unison here, like synchronized, yes, there we go, okay? Synchronized crescent moon stretching. So, natural intuitive movement can be really good to break up fascial adhesions. So this is particularly beneficial as your dancers get older. Little kids don't have fascial adhesions. That's why they bend and butt all over the place, because they do so much intuitive movement. When we start doing more repetitive movement, we can start to create what's called fascial adhesions. So adding a little bit of natural movement, like where you're not worrying too much about the placement entirely of the upper body, works to work through these things, okay? So if you want to take a pause for a second, crescent moon sweeps. This is going to be especially beneficial for your older dancers, I would say, and it's going to vary. So if you're in a studio where the students are highly competitive and they're taking a ton of dance every week, you might start doing this with your 10-year-olds, okay? Not your minis, you see why now? It just turns into this like rolling around, okay? It just doesn't work with a 5-year-old, nor do they need it. So you're gonna waste time, and I don't like to waste time. Okay, so it's a waste of your time, plus it's not going to yield the benefits you're trying to get, okay? All right, do you want to do your other side really quick? I was gonna go straight through this sequence, but I think we gotta go to your other side. So just step back to hands and knees, table pose, or high plank, whatever feels better. Okay. So then we'll take it through the left side, so you can just feel it. I'll talk a little more about alignment. Okay, step your left foot forward between your hands. So the beauty of teaching low lunge is that if you teach it from the get-go, then your students know it when they get to it, okay? So they know how to align it, and it requires less time of you to align the stretches that follow. So even in low lunge, you want your hips squared. And probably most of you, even in a low lunge position, because the hip flexor tends to get a little bit tight, the back hip wants to open. So even in a low lunge, really start to focus on squaring the pelvis. So both hips should be pointed to the ground. Then from there, we go right into our crescent moon by simply lowering the back knee. And then lifting your torso. Now, if you notice that your back extended and arched, that just means you're normal and you grew up dancing, okay? But try to correct that by engaging the abdominals. Think of lifting your hip bones towards your ribs to find a neutral spine so that you take the stretch to the hip flexors and take the pressure off the low back. Now side body stretch, so crescent moon side bend. So when we want to layer it up and add a little more to it, we go to the side. Why? Because this stretches your obliques, but it also stretches your lats, your teres major, your tricep, and your pec major, all of which limit shoulder flexion. So we need to create really good mobility in the upper body. So I happen to really like this stretch because it's like 4 in 1, okay? Then you're going to add your sweeps as the dancers start to grasp it, as they become a little bit older. And then we're just going to go side to side. Now the nice thing about the sweep, so I'm just going to let you guys start going side to side. I don't care so much about the placement and alignment of the upper body. In fact, you kind of want to let that go. You want to go for more mobility in the upper body while maintaining a squared pelvis though, okay? So you just got to watch it a little bit so the hips don't start going everywhere, but it's about just kind of breaking things up and getting into a nice groove, okay? Okay, so come out of that one. Oh my gosh, you guys are running out of time. Okay, so that's crescent moon sweeps. The next stretch is called psoas release. It's in your stretch guide. I'm not going to take you through it because I have one we all have to do before you guys leave, okay? It's a staple of everything we teach. So psoas release is the next stretch in there. It's another hip flexor stretch. Again, recommended for your older dancers. So your littles just aren't going to grasp it, nor is it worth the time it's going to take to teach it. Okay, so older dancers. It involves spinal flexion, and they're all going to want you to check their spinal flexion, and then they're all going to say, I don't really feel it. So just don't even go there, okay? You don't want to go there. But half pigeon prep, we're going to do half pigeon prep. This stretch, every single one of your dancers should be doing, not 5 to 7-year-olds, they'll just do half pigeon, but we'll end with half pigeon. But half pigeon prep stretches so many things, okay? It stretches your deep six external hip rotators, your abductors, glute medius, glute minimus, TFL, all those muscles that were opposing external hip rotation that we talked about with your first position. But it also stretches your back hip flexors, your posterior calf, and your lateral calf. So it is like a win-win. You gotta do this stretch, okay? And you're gonna feel it. So let's go to high plank. Then we'll go to downward facing dog. And then you'll lift your right leg up. So take an inhale, lift your right leg. Exhale, come to low lunge. That transition step that I love to teach because it just really makes my job easier down the road. Now, from here, you're gonna heel toe your right foot over to the left. Now, if you've done half pigeon, don't go into what you think half pigeon is, okay? Sorry, yeah, no, go that way, Avery. So wrong, yeah. So over to the left, yep. Plant both hands in front of your leg. And from here, I'm gonna give you all, yeah. So Avery's going to bring her right knee down to her right wrist, but keep her back toes tucked, and you're gonna stay lifted above the position, okay? Now flex, is that your right foot? Your right ankle. So flex it. Okay, you should all feel a bit of a stretch going on in your hips, yes, no? If you don't, go a little bit lower, okay? If you do and you're good, stay there. Now, straighten your right leg and lift your hips up in the air, but stay on the pinky edge side of your foot. And keep your, yeah, I love the collective side, and I know everybody just got there. Okay, stay on the pinky edge side of your foot though, so that you can stretch your peroneal muscles. Peroneal muscles help the foot bevel, and they're super tight. Now, draw your right hip back and your left hip forward. Yeah, there you go. Okay, lower back down. So inhale, come back down. We're going to do that a few times. Exhale, lift right back up. It gets easier as you go through it a few more times. Inhale, lower back down. And then exhale, lift right back up. Keep the hips squared. Inhale, lower back down. And exhale, lift right back up. Again, not really recommended for your minis, but 8 and up, yes. And then come back down. From here, untuck your back toes. And then walk forward. So everybody's gonna come, this is what your half pigeon would be, okay? So this is a good one for your littles, and you can start this with your 5-year-olds. It's not gonna look like this, okay? But they can start getting into it because a lot of them are limited by external hip rotation, so why not get them started now? Start giving them the tools to find success now. Even though it's not gonna totally look like this, they'll start to feel it, okay? You wanna do your other side? You got to do your other side. Okay, let's do the other side real quick, and then I will let you guys go, but don't worry, I'll be here all weekend, and you can come ask me about stretches in the guide and say, how do I do this one? Because you need to try horizon lunge and sunrise that's in here, but we're not going to get to it. Okay, lift your left leg. Low lunge. Heel toe your left foot over to the, yeah, right? Am I right here? Let's just look at Avery, okay? Okay, so we're set up, left foot's flexed, back toes are tucked, lower down as much as you want. So see if you can start to bring your left knee down to your left wrist. Leg is squared, ankle is flexed, back knee is lifted, toes are tucked. Exhale, lift up. Stand the pinky side of your foot. Draw your left hip back and your right hip forward. Breathe here. Inhale, lower back down. Exhale, come back up. Inhale, lower back down. Exhale, come back up. Inhale, lower back down. And stay there. And then you would untuck your back toes, lower your hips down, and walk forward. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now, because you know this. Your dancers are going to want to lean to the side. Who wants to lean to the side right now? Anybody want to lean off to the left? It'd be way less intense over there, right? Don't lean to the side. If that means you continue to hold yourself up, hold yourself up. If you need to draw your front foot in towards your toes or so, draw it in. Okay, you guys, you're done. Thank you so much. I wish we could have got a few more stretches, but I'll be here all weekend. So if you want to stretch more, just come find me. Thank you for your time.